On Monday, a change in the exchange rate regarding Russia will be announced. After meeting with NATO leadership, Trump will deliver a speech about how he will interact with the Russian Federation and its leadership. "We're tired of playing childish games," said Trump. Putin responded to this by intensifying the bombings of Ukraine. "I'll explain the whole situation, how it started, where it has led, and in the end, we'll analyze together what might actually start happening." For now, don't forget to subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Leave a like at the end after watching, and please write your opinion about what you learned today. And also, there's a link to a free book under the video. I recommend reading Capitalism 101. It's not a dry history about capitalism, it's a collection of stories and anecdotes about historical events. I think you'll find it very, very interesting. So the turning point, Putin infuriated Trump. After the bombing of the maternity hospital, Trump's patience snapped. Two United States senators, Graham and Blumenthal, one Republican and the other Democrat, became the most serious defenders of Ukraine in the United States Congress. They flew to Ukraine several times, just recently returned, spoke and met with Zelensky, with the military, and after that, they are now trying to convey the viewpoint of the Ukrainian military and Ukrainian leadership to those in power in the United States, including United States President Trump. They are also the initiators of the bill to punish those who help Russia in the war. So the essence of the bill is as follows. If you buy oil, gas, coal, plutonium, or uranium from Russia, you are financing their war in Ukraine, and you are preventing it from being stopped. The senators propose not allowing goods from those countries that buy these specified products from Russia into the United States. Or more precisely, to impose a so-called 500% tariff on them, which practically eliminates any possibility for them to export their goods to the United States. By the way, relabeling goods won't work either because Americans have the ability to find out where something was produced. Let's say, for example, if France, let's take France, was decided to be punished and their ability to export to the United States was blocked, they would lose $87 billion annually, or 13.6% of their global exports. Approximately 28,000 French companies, mostly cheese, cosmetics, and wine producers, depend on the United States of America on our market. And they would go bankrupt, and hundreds of thousands of French people would be left without jobs, with no chance of finding work in the near future. For a number of other countries, this would be an even bigger blow. The senators, after returning from their trip to Ukraine, gave an interview on
This morning, we have a lot to discuss, so let's start with Senator Lindsey Graham from Clemson, South Carolina, and Senator Richard Blumenthal from Bridgeport, Connecticut. They both just returned from Europe, where they met with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Good morning to both of you, senators.
Good morning.
Senator Graham, I want to start with you. Russia is escalating. They are not going to end this war in Ukraine. The NATO Secretary General will be in Washington this week and will meet with President Trump, who, according to our information, is considering new funding for Ukraine. This will be the first time since he took office. What do you know about what is expected?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of the president, but tomorrow evening I'll be at the dinner with Senator Blumenthal and other senators, as well as with Secretary General Mark Ryukty. A turning point is approaching in connection with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For several months, President Trump has been trying to lure Putin to the negotiating table. He imposed tariffs against countries that allow fentanyl to enter our country, as well as for other bad behavior. He left the door open regarding Russia. That door is about to close. decades. And I have 85 co-authors in the United States Senate on the Congressional Sanctions bill that will give President Trump a sledgehammer to hit Putin's economy and all those countries that support Putin's war machine.
Trump spent months trying to convince Putin to stop the war. He gave Russia opportunity after opportunity, break after break, negotiation after negotiation. All he wanted to do was stop the killing and destruction. At first, Ukraine resisted, not understanding that a bad peace is better than a good war. But in the end, Ukraine said, "We agree to peace." Russia renounced all its words, assurances, and promises. Russia seems to be counting on the help of its allies.
China, India, and Brazil buy oil, petroleum products, and other goods from Russia. It is this money that Putin uses to wage war. This package of bills in Congress that we are considering will give President Trump the ability to impose a 500% tariff on any country that helps Russia and supports Putin's war machine. He can increase or decrease it from 0 to 500. He has maximum flexibility. We are going after the people who keep Putin in power and imposing additional sanctions against Russia. This is the sledgehammer that President Trump will have to end the war.
The United States president, with the Senate's approval, will be able to impose tariffs of up to 500% on countries buying resources from Russia, which will ruin those revenues.
This has to be a critical moment. This must be a decisive moment for these sanctions. And the use of this sledgehammer right now was emphasized by all the European allies who attended the meeting that Senator Frem and I participated in Europe. They are absolutely united, one after another. In this close setting, they expressed the opinion that these sanctions should be tough and strict in order to change behavior. Thus, the wording on exemption from sanctions that will be included in this bill is very similar to the provision that existed in previous ones. Similar measures that give the president the ability to act in the interests of national security, but also provide oversight by Congress. And I think that this kind of assurance is very important for my Democratic colleagues. But what is most important, in my opinion, at this moment is our unity. Senator Frem and I, a Republican and a Democrat, are coming together, and European leaders with different views are also showing unity. And we want to use the seized assets again as a united front. I believe that a multilateral approach is the only way to make Putin come to the negotiating table. Because he's a bandit, he only understands strength.
He's a bandit. Putin is a bandit, said Leslie. And he understands only one language, the language of strength. But there are also billions of Russian funds frozen in accounts, mostly in Europe, and some in the United States. So they were frozen because of Russia's attack on Ukraine.
Just to clarify on this point, we're talking about confiscated assets. In Europe, there are about 300 billion, and here in the United States, about 5 billion. Do you think the president will be ready to use these funds, and will European leaders be willing to seize and use this money?
Part of the plan that I think will be discussed at this meeting with the Secretary General is for Ukraine to receive assets from NATO and use them to acquire military resources from the United States. But the confiscated property, the seized Russian assets, can be used by the Europeans. They are developing a plan to do this, at least with part of these assets. We're talking about billions of dollars in interest earned from these resources, which are extremely important for Ukraine. And it will also be possible to access the $5 billion allocated by the United States. I think it's time to do it.
Europe will have the opportunity to use this money to purchase American weapons and to transfer them to Ukraine. That means Ukraine will be fighting with Russian funds.
The idea that America should sell weapons to help Ukraine is currently being actively discussed. We have already given a lot to Ukraine, providing them with both financial and military aid. Now we have an agreement with Ukraine on minerals, which is valued at trillions of dollars. I don't want to get ahead of the president, but stay tuned for news about confiscated assets. The Europeans want to limit the use of interest from these assets in favor of Ukraine. Secretary Bessoud wants to go further. Stay tuned for news about a plan for more decisive action regarding confiscated assets. Stay tuned for a plan in which America will start selling our European allies a huge amount of weapons that could benefit Ukraine. Putin calculated that we would get tired and that Europe would get tired. He made a huge mistake. NATO is bigger and stronger, and we are more committed than ever to making sure he doesn't take Ukraine by force.
It seems that the White House politicians have completely changed their opinion about Russia. There is nothing new to supply to Ukraine except for previously approved orders, deliveries, and so on. Soon you will see how much and what exactly we will be selling to Europe for transfer to Ukraine. Europe is freezing, or rather has already frozen. But now it will start using about 300 billion Russian money, and from that it will buy military equipment in the United States. The United States transfers existing weapons and immediately orders new ones to replenish our stockpile. This is what it means to fool around in front of the United States president. This is what it means to be a street bully among world-class businessmen.
So Congress is on the verge of passing the most significant sanctions package in history. This will give President Trump tools he doesn't have today, a real sledgehammer. And the main violators here are China, India, and Brazil. India buys oil from Russia at a low price and resells it. It's disgusting. I spoke with President Trump. He said last week it's time to take action. He tried to lure Putin to the negotiating table. But my goal is to end this war, and the only way to end this war is to make those who support Putin choose between the American economy and helping Putin. One person should make the choice and negotiate, President Trump, with maximum freedom of action to end this war. China, India, and Brazil. If you keep helping Putin, you will pay a heavy price.
China and Brazil are buying oil for themselves at good prices. India is buying it at a big discount, reselling it and making a lot of money, while at the same time financing the destruction of Ukraine. I think India already knows that it won't be able to do this anymore.
The situation with Putin's invasion of Russia is about to change. I expect that in the coming days you will see unprecedented arms deliveries to help Ukraine defend itself. I expect that in the coming days President Trump will introduce tariffs and sanctions that he didn't have before. I expect that in the coming days Europe will provide even greater support in its efforts to help Ukraine. Putin miscalculated here. For 6 months, President Trump tried to lure Putin to the negotiating table, but the number of attacks increased, not decreased. One of the biggest mistakes Putin made was trying to outplay Trump. And you will see in the coming days and weeks that there will be a major attempt to bring Putin to the negotiating table. And for those who help him, China is buying cheap Russian oil and bears no responsibility. These days will soon come to an end.
Putin decided that Trump, for a second term, is kind of a weakling. More precisely, that he's ready to dance to Russia's tune as long as there's no war. As Senator Graham said, Putin miscalculated.
Senator Blumenthal on Ukraine. As you know, North Korea is sending troops to fight on Russia's side in Ukraine. Russia's top diplomat just met with Kim Jong-un. We know that the missile technology Russia is providing them is a kind of payment for sending people to the war. Will this significantly affect North Korea's nuclear program? Has the threat to the United States increased today because of this?
The threat of cooperation in this area, the transfer of missile technology to North Korea, as well as the support for Iran that Russia could potentially provide. This is strong evidence of why we need to be strong together with our allies against this axis. This threat still exists. The progress regarding Iran's nuclear program should not lull us into complacency when it comes to nuclear proliferation. And certainly, yes, we must act more firmly, not only towards Russia, but also towards North Korea. And our plan should be to deter such cooperation in the field of nuclear weapons. That's why our cooperation with our allies is so important. As we walked around the hall, we saw leading European leaders who gathered last Thursday in Rome and thanked us for being here. Senator Graham, myself, and General Kellogg representing Trump. This moment of unity must be seized, and the time for it is absolutely necessary. President Zelensky is showing resilience and courage, but his people are dying from bombs and drones, and children are being abducted. We really need to demonstrate the strength of the United States, because only strength can bring Putin to the negotiating table.
So what is Trump going to say in his speech about the war, which he will deliver on Monday during or after his meeting with NATO representatives? I will send Patriot systems, he said, and additionally some other very modern weapons. This is what Trump said on Saturday. I am very upset, he said, frustrated probably. I am very frustrated with Vladimir Putin's actions. I thought he was a man who stands by his word. Well, in the business world, that's just about the worst, most disgusting and terrible things someone can say about you. I understand that in politics, everything is the opposite, but Trump comes from the business world, and that's the worst insult you can give a person. And what about Putin? He says one thing, sings beautiful songs, and then sends missiles and drones to kill and destroy. On Monday, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, is meeting with Trump in Washington, and of course, deals and plans for weapons for Ukraine will be arranged, prepared, and so on. After the Russians bombed the maternity hospital in Ukraine, my patient snapped, said Trump. With our weapons, Ukraine has already shot down a bunch of junk that Russia is sending to them, and now they will be able to shoot down much more. Well, besides just shooting down, they are also getting some missiles that can fly up to 500 kilometers deep into Russia, and they could hit the rear areas there. Trump's tone regarding Russia and Ukraine has changed, especially since July 8th, when Trump said he would no longer tolerate Putin's lies.
I haven't agreed on the number yet, but they will have some because they really need protection. But the European Union is paying for it. We're not paying anything for it, but we'll send them. It'll be business for us, and we'll send them Patriot systems, which they desperately need, because Putin really surprised a lot of people. He says nice things, then bombs everyone indiscriminately in the evening. So there's a little problem here, and I don't like it.
Also, on Sunday, United States senators introduced a bipartisan sanctions bill aimed at putting pressure on Moscow and its allies. This law, which Senator Lindsey Graham called a sledgehammer, would give Trump the authority to impose large-scale economic sanctions against countries that help Russia, including those that buy Russian goods such as China, India, or Brazil. United States Special Envoy Kate Kellogg will visit Ukraine on Monday for high-level talks. Trump is also expected to meet with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, where he says an important statement on Russia will be made. Germany, on the other hand, has ruled out the possibility of sending its long-range missiles to Kyiv and stated that Berlin will fund the production of hundreds of similar systems capable of striking deep behind Russian lines. According to reports, the new weapons will be able to hit targets at a distance of more than 500 kilometers, allowing Ukraine to disrupt Russian logistics and command centers. The deliveries are expected to begin by the end of this month.
That is, by late July. The United States will be ready to send lethal defensive and offensive weapons to Ukraine. At the same time, Ukrainians hate Trump because he is trying to stop this war. They demand money and weapons, insisting on non-interference. Go, 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 go. Maybe God has answered their prayers, ladies and gentlemen. Putin left Trump in such a state of stunned amazement, and I'm putting it very mildly, that Trump might give Ukraine something it never even dreamed of. I don't know, like a magician. I mean, the move. We'll react to our involvement in military actions in Europe. Maybe they're also shocked by Putin, or maybe they still think our involvement in Europe is a mistake.
In the past 72 hours, Russia has intensified its military campaign in Ukraine, launching brutal missile strikes, burning cities, and according to Western analysts, carrying out one of the bloodiest escalations of the war. And then came the signal. President Donald Trump posted a mysterious but direct warning on social media. Enough with the excuses. And on Monday, we take action. American intelligence insiders now believe that he may announce tariffs of up to 500% on Russian imports. This could be the most aggressive economic retaliatory measure since the Cold War. But is this just another trade war tactic, or are we about to witness a geopolitical shift with huge financial consequences? In this video, we'll try to predict what's ahead based on the latest news, behind-the-scenes moves in Washington, and signals from the financial markets. Because when world leaders start playing economic chess with nuclear powers, understanding the next move isn't just strategy, it's a matter of survival.
What exactly will we, the United States, do to stop the war?
Donald Trump has never been predictable, but his recent rhetoric indicates a serious escalation. According to sources close to the administration, the proposed 500% tariffs on Russian goods are not just a matter of trade. They are intended to send a direct message: the United States will no longer tolerate aggression without consequences. This would not just be a symbolic move. Key Russian exports to the United States, including aluminum, fertilizers, and energy-related materials, could face supply chain disruptions overnight. Financial markets have begun reacting. On Friday, futures for defense company stocks surged sharply, oil prices spiked, and there were also sharp fluctuations in the market for commodities like nickel and palladium, which are closely tied to Russian production. Investors are preparing for volatility. But here's the main question. Is Trump laying the groundwork for a larger-scale economic confrontation with Russia, or is he using tariffs to force Moscow to give in without a single shot being fired? In any case, the message is loud and clear. The United States is moving from diplomacy to pressure. While Trump is preparing his statement, the battlefield tells a darker story. Over the past week, Russia has intensified attacks on Ukrainian territory, launching missile strikes on infrastructure, energy facilities, and even civilian areas. Satellite images confirm devastating damage across eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian officials have called the latest attacks the most brutal wave since the beginning of the war. The world is watching, and so is Washington. The Biden administration, while continuing to coordinate international alliances behind the scenes, has warned of serious consequences if the violence escalates further. But Trump is using this moment, positioning himself as a leader who is ready to act, not just talk. The tariffs he proposes may be just the first of several tools for retaliation. Military analysts suggest that if the attacks continue, we may see an acceleration of arms deliveries to Kyiv and possibly new defensive commitments from NATO allies. So, we have to ask, is the West preparing for an economic war or something even more direct? As tensions between the United States and Russia rise, the world does not remain neutral. European countries, especially Germany and France, are becoming increasingly concerned. Berlin has already convened an emergency economic summit. There are rumors that E might join AE and impose synchronized sanctions if Russia does not back down.
So the expectations are A, an increase in Patriot air defense system supplies and similar equipment, B, new deliveries of advanced weapons purchased from the United States by NATO members, those who took money from the $300 billion in frozen Russian assets. Let me remind you, B, tariffs up to 500% on all Russian goods to the United States, possibly to Europe as well, by the way. I just don't know. AG. A threat to India, China, and Brazil of up to 500% tariffs if they don't stop buying energy resources from Russia. These actions are fully supported by both NATO and the European Union, as well as by both parties in the United States, which is very important, that is, by both Congress and the Senate. So far, Russia is deliberately showing that none of this concerns it at all. Soon we will find out the extent of their concern or lack thereof, because it's one thing to put on a show and another to actually live with it once it has already happened. In China, Trump has already rattled the authorities. Xi can no longer act on his own. He is no longer the distant leader of China. The Communist Party has set up a committee to oversee him, and this committee has broader powers than the General Secretary of the Central Committee and the President of China. This happened solely because Xi got involved in a war with America, well, with Trump. We don't know if something similar will happen with Putin. But one thing is clear. The diplomatic attempt to reason with Russia has ended, or rather, the attempts have ended. Our guns haven't been uncovered and haven't started speaking yet. But starting Monday, the pressure program begins. Pressure, Russian style, yes. And if that doesn't work, let's hope that Trump still has some aces up his sleeve. Otherwise, the only thing left will be settling things with bricks, stones, and clubs. That's all, ladies and gentlemen. Let's wrap up and wait to see what Donald Trump will say today. Subtitles created by